Item 1, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor Dray. We also have apologies for Councillor Phil Shaw and Eileen Gadsden. Are there any others? No? Right, agenda item 2, substitute members. Members, Councillor Arthur Williams will be substituting for Councillor Dray. Councillor Mike Carter will be substitute for Councillor Phil Shaw. And Councillor Mike Webb will be substituting for Eileen Gadsden. I'd like to say at this stage, thank you for all those that are substituting. This is a very, very important meeting. Audit is important to the council, so those that have put their names forward to substitute, thank you very much, and for everybody attending too. We don't have a vice chairman tonight, but I'm going to proceed without one. Agenda item 3, non-members attending. There are none. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of December 2021. Are the minutes agreed, members? Agreed. Agenda item 5, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, members? None. Agenda item 6, internal audit, annual audit plan 2022 to 2023. The Chief Auditor, Mike Porter, will present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report presents the proposed audit plan for 2022-23. The audit plan itself is essentially a programme of work for the year ahead and sets out all the audits we're going to complete during that financial year. The audit plan enables myself as a... Sorry.
That's an alarm. My apologies. Not muted the phone, that was an alarm.
The purpose of the audit plan is to set out a programme of work, and that work is designed to enable me at year end to provide an opinion on the Council's arrangements for governance, risk management, internal control. So we complete all that work, and that enables myself to draw together that opinion year end. The opinion is important because it feeds into the annual governance statement. So in putting together the audit plan itself, we consult on senior managers in terms of actually what would they like to see in the audit plan. We look at the council's risk registers, what risks are there in the risk registers. We also consult with other local authorities in terms of what might be in their audit plan. We do horizon scanning in terms of what is important to internal audit. A couple of the major topics that people are talking about at the moment is cyber security. That's high on top of people's agenda. Climate change is another area that people suggest that warrants looking at in terms of the council's arrangement for dealing with climate change and becoming carbon neutral by 2030. So these are the things we consider in putting together the audit plan. Appendix A sets out the audits we're going to complete, and they're in relation to the corporate risks for the authority. We also put a proposed outline scope. Gives you a flavour in terms of what the audit will be about. Also, what we would normally bring to this committee along with the audit plan is the Audit Charter. The Audit Charter itself is essentially a terms of reference for internal audit. It sets out the scope and responsibility, how we will deliver internal audit. There's likely to be some proposed changes to the way internal audit is delivered in 2023. And I'll pass on to Naomi to talk about our plans or aspirations for internal audit delivery in the following year.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just for audit committees noting, really, you may have already seen on the key decisions document, but there is a proposal from next year that, as well as the actual chief audit executive role being delivered by Basildon Borough Council, obviously being fulfilled by Mike at the moment, that actually the whole internal audit function is actually delivered via Basildon Borough Council. And that's mainly been prompted by the fact that Jim's due to retire in a few months. So we've obviously had to look at options in terms of how we deliver the service going forward. We have looked at a range of options, but I think most members, as I mentioned before, will be aware that it's quite a challenging market to recruit good internal auditors. And added to that, we know that as a very small authority, we've got limited resilience to actually deliver the audit plan. We're reliant on a couple of key individuals. So we do feel at this stage that it is the best sort of solution for the council and will deliver the best value for money if there's a kind of a joint partnership arrangement with Basildon to deliver those services because they'll have a bigger team, more resilience, more capacity, more training opportunities, etc. So the portfolio holder decision hasn't actually been taken as such yet, but it's due to be taken within the next couple of weeks. And likewise, Basildon Council have got a paper that they're taking to their council to approve. I think I just wanted to mention, as obviously there's might be the question about why we're sort of linking with Basildon at this time as opposed to Brentwood when we've got a shared service arrangement obviously coming on stream with Brentwood. The main reason for that is really just about the sort of procurement processes in place for Brentwood. They actually have their internal audit services delivered by an external firm, so they're not in a position to sort of move forward with us in terms of internal audit services at this point. However, it is something we may consider again in the future. But obviously, as I said, we've got this pre-existing relationship with Basildon, and they are in a position to be able to deliver those for us without, to give a kind of seamless transition. So at this point, it does feel like that's the best way to deliver the services from 22-23 onwards. But yeah, really just for committees noting, because it's not actually a decision of yours to make, but I just wanted you to be aware of that, because obviously it will impact on in terms of how we deliver the audit plan for next year.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is Mike Porter still going to be doing some of our internal audit?
Yeah, so Mike's will still be in post and will still deliver the chief audit executive role. Obviously, we're contracting, if you like, with Basildon as an entity, so obviously we can't guarantee that the personnel would stay the same, but obviously I don't think there's any intention for Mike to step out of that role at the moment. So there will be a continuity from that point of view, and also under the arrangement, it's expected that the other auditor role would transfer across. So again, we'd have continuity in terms of the actual audit resource that delivers the audits, being the same person that does that at the moment. But obviously they'll have the sort of backup and resilience from the rest of the Basildon team as well.
Thank you, because I think that's important. Councillor Shaw.
She's there. I couldn't hear you, Leslie. Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations on your retirement, Mike. I was James. Very good, congratulations. I'll retire you off as well. And thank you, Naomi. You did actually answer one of my questions I was going to ask, why we were going that way. Looking at the Appendix A, you've got corporate risk 2, which is a good assessment. Then you go 3A, 3B, etc. down, and they're assessed as adequate. Can we not bring them up to good assessment? That's on 6.6 page.
I might.
May I ask, is that, Chair, is that under corporate services non-planned?
Right, this is, go to page 6.6 on Appendix A. Go to corporate risk 2, it says good assessment. Go to corporate risk 3A, 3B and 4, and I think there is, and it says assessed as adequate. I just wondered if they could be is there any reason we can't get them
Do
as
you want me to
good assessment?
I can transfer the microphone back, but essentially, yeah. So the appendix, as Mike set out, is sets out all the corporate risk areas and whether there is an audit plan for next year against those. On a number of them, there is audits planned to be delivered, and in that case, there's a short explanation of what those audits are. However, some of the risks say none planned for next year. So, for example, with corporate risk 2, there's a failure of safeguarding arrangements. It says none planned, and likewise for 3A. In those instances, it just gives a synopsis of the assessment that was made in prior years. So, where you refer to good assessment, that was for safeguarding in 2021 when it was last audited. And in terms of food inspections, that was last audited in 1920 when it's assessed as adequate. But neither of those are actually on the audit plan for next year, because obviously we can't audit every area every year, so it's done on a kind of cyclical basis. But obviously, just to take your sort of more general point, it's the role of internal audit to kind of assess the control environment for each of these individual areas. As an organisation, as a council, we obviously strive to improve performance, and the audit process informs that in terms of looking at areas where there are recommendations that could be made to bring up performance, but it's obviously not the responsibility of audit as a function to bring that performance up. It's the responsibility of the council as a whole, and the auditor's responsibility is then just to make that assessment of where they think they're at. So there is obviously an intent to bring up performance, and audit can help in that, but it's not actually audit's responsibility to bring up performance.
Yes.
Thank you for the explanation. So I take it all the portfolios for these areas know that when they were audited, they were just assessed as adequate.
Yes,
and
all of
they
these.
will actually then be told they've got to get their people involved to make it a better organisation. Because I think food, health and safety, these are very relevant items that we need to have. I think they should be very good on some of them. I mean, I wouldn't like to go into a full food premises and find it's just assessed as adequate. So I just wondered if the portfolios were going to be made aware that they need to get their teams out there and get their work sorted a little bit better. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, respond, yeah. So just to give an idea of the levels of adequacy, so I know adequate doesn't sound great on principle, but the top level is good, so that's the highest level, then is adequate, and then, what is it, poor, the two beneath that. Anyway, limited, sorry, yeah, I was forgetting the terminology. So, yeah, adequate it basically means that there are, as it suggests, adequate controls in place, which, you could argue is good enough. Obviously, we want areas to have good. But to sort of address your wider point again, in terms of portfolio holders being aware, yes, so all of these audits where we refer to prior year audits have been both brought to this committee, so members of the audit committee will have seen the detailed report that Jim and Mike have prepared and all the recommendations associated with that. And as a matter of course, when an audit is completed, the portfolio holder is copied in, as well as the assistant director, obviously. So there is awareness, and obviously one of the key ways we hold people to account is through the recommendations and monitoring of the implementation of those, which again comes back to this committee for them to consider.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Members, there is one recommendation set out at paragraph 8.1 on page 6.5 of the report, that the proposed audit plan and charter for 2022-23 be approved. Can those members in favour please raise their hands? That's unanimous, members. Thank you. Item number 7, Audit Progress Report 2021-22. The Chief Auditor, Mike Porter, will present this report.
Thank you, Chair.
Please.
Just before I move on to agenda item 7, I'd like to say a big thank you to Jim for the past 4 or 5 years that I've worked with him. He's made my life relatively easy. So a big thanks to Jim for the last 4 or 5 years that I've worked with him. As I say, it's been a pleasure working with him. Right, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7. So this is a progress report to update members on the work of the internal audit team since the last committee back in December. So since I reported to this committee back in December, we've completed a further 5 audit engagements. 2 of these engagements were rated as good, so that's the top level, and 3 were assessed as adequate. So there's nothing of concern that I need to bring to your attention. If I had given a limited assurance rating, then I would basically talk you through those audits and raise with you the concerns identified. But as all those audits have been assessed as either good or adequate, there's nothing that is concerning me that I need to bring to your attention. In terms of counter-fraud activity, the activity is undertaken by the Senior Compliance Officer that sits in Revs and Bends, and as part of the work he undertakes, he looks at fraud in relation to council tax, business rates, and as part of the work he generates cashable savings where he identifies unbilled properties. And as you can see from the report, he continues to make good progress in returning significant cashable savings to the local authority. Lastly, I'd like to talk about progress made by service departments in addressing internal audit recommendations, and this is identified at section 3. We've raised a total of 2 new recommendations since the last audit committee in December. Okay. 10. Yeah. We have a total of 12 live recommendations as it stands, so there's only a few audit recommendations currently live. There's not a large number of outstanding recommendations. 4 of the live recommendations we currently have, the dates have been pushed back for a number of reasons, and I'll pass to Jim to talk about those 4 audit recommendations where the dates have been moved.
Thank you. Good evening, members. If I draw your attention, please, to page 7.21, the procurement audit. Members will recall that this was linked into a constitution review, but this whole position regarding the constitution is likely to be sort of reset with a harmonisation to certain aspects with Brentwood Council, and accordingly the date has been reset to develop a process and to get that into place by the end of the year. On page 7.23 and 24 on budget setting, the same principle applies. On page 7.25 relating to complaints, this work has been completed and a revised procedure has been drafted. It just now waits sign-off by the leadership team, so at the next committee I expect that to be reported as completed. On page 7.26, housing benefits. This was a low priority action to update an internal control which staff complete a declaration in that they will not access the revenues and benefit system for their own or friends or families. Since the recommendation, this has become linked with a requirement by the DWP for all those who will have access to the revenues and benefit system to have a basic DBS check. That process has been completed, and we're going to roll out the declaration, but obviously, given the time of the year, priority has been given to implementing the new council tax support scheme and for the annual billing for council tax and business rate. And again, I expect this to be completed by the end of April. And if I could just draw your attention to the cemetery management recommendation on page 7.25. We didn't have an update on the status of this at the time of finalising the report, but I can now confirm that this recommendation has been implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? No? Members, there are 3 recommendations set out at paragraph 7.1 on page 7.2 of the report. 1, that the update on delivering the 2021-22 audit plan be noted. 2, that the conclusions and results from the completed audit engagements in Appendices 2 be noted. And 3, that the updated status of audit recommendations in Appendix 3 be noted. Are these noted, members? Right, before I close the meeting, I would also like to add my thanks to Dean Cavani. He's been very, very helpful, very thorough, very clear with your explanations at meetings, and you will be very well missed. But at least we won't be having any phone alarms going off in another meeting.
I've got to go out with a bang, so...
So thank you from me, and I'm sure from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your help. So, members, and the subs for tonight, thank you very much. That's the final agenda item, and the meeting is closed at 7:49 or 7:50. Thank you.